All right, so let's say we want to consider a group from where we want to collect data. Okay, now for that we need several informations, right? You need to define several things. For example, what could be our population, what could be the sample, and etc., right? For example, uh, if we want to conduct a survey, uh, then we need to the first thing you need to do is to identify the population we want to study, right? Okay, now uh, let's say I want to conduct a survey on Math 1000. I have already done that, right? A week before, or rather the week after the spring break, I guess. So if you want to conduct a survey on anything, it could be on anything. The first thing you need to do is to find the group uh, where you want to collect data, right? So for Math 1000, my group of study was the students in that section for that course. If you want to find the number of squirrels in Laramie, then what could be the population? If you want to find the number of crows in Laramie, then what could be the population? So again, the first job on your hand is to identify the population, right? Which you want to study, you want to collect data from, right? Okay. So now, let's say you have been hired. We are just going over the example, excuse me, on the book. Let's say you have been hired uh, by the uh, current mayor of Laramie, okay, to determine the amount of vote he will get, the amount of support he will get in the next election. Okay. Okay. Now, since you have been hired to make a conduct a survey on that, I mean, how is he doing? Whether he will be elected for the next term as well, or uh, uh, if he has sufficient support from people. What are they talking about? How are they behaving? How are they uh, going to vote and all that? So again, the first job in your hand is to define the population. Which group of people you want to consider, you want to collect data from, right? Okay. So now I'll take answers from you first. Just don't look at anything. Just imagine the situation that the current mayor has hired you to conduct a survey whether or not he will be elected in the next term. Okay. Or let's say uh, uh, the candidate from the opposition party has hired you, that whether or not he will be elected in the next election, beating the current mayor. Okay. So if you consider this situation, what do you think the population should be? So you can write in the chat, or uh, you can unmute yourself. Just express yourself by just uh, imagining this situation. What do you think the population should be? Because you'll see we'll have several different opinions. So let's see one by one. Okay. Okay, I have one answer, which is population are voters. Okay. Next one, I have eligible voters. Okay. Next, I have the population should be the amount of people that will vote. Okay. So far, we have the same answers. Anything else? out of your mind, out of your head rather. Eligible voters, amount of people voting. Okay, pretty similar. So you can imagine that since he's talking about the election, um, it should be something close to that, eligible voters, right? Those people who will vote. So you can start with this. Since we are here in Laramie, it has to be the citizen of Laramie. People out from outside can't really vote for Laramie, right? So that's the first thing. But is it enough? No, not all the citizens can vote, right? Or not all the citizens will vote. So the next thing you need to consider is how many voters are there, right? That means how many eligible voters are there. By eligibility requirement, we mean uh, people who are more than 18, right? Generally, I'm not sure what's the condition here in Laramie. That's the general condition. Is it the same, by the way? Or is it 16 plus? Can you confirm? Is there anyone who is originally from Laramie?
What's the question again?
Um, uh, what's the eligibility requirement for voting? I mean, do you need to be 18 plus or 16 plus in Laramie?
I believe it's 16 plus. It might be 17 plus actually.
Okay. Yeah, it could be different depending on the place, but generally it's 18 plus. That's why I asked. So it could be 16 plus as well. Anyway, so now you're looking for the eligible voters depending on the eligibility requirements and all that. But is this enough? Is this enough? I mean, definitely want to um, conduct a survey on the next election. So that means somehow or other you are looking to take opinions from the voters, from the eligible voters. But if you want to be more and more precise, because since you have been hired, you need to provide, or you want to provide him with a better estimation, right? So can you somehow better this by doing some modifications or finding a new way to define your population? Can you imagine anything? Let's just take a pause and try to imagine. Definitely, as of now, we think the eligible voters should be the population. But can we better this estimation? What do you think? Because we want our survey to be as close as possible to the original election. It will definitely not be the same. It can't be. This is definitely an estimation on a uh, future election, right? So it can't be exactly the same, but we want to be as close as possible. Okay, okay, can I get the recording of this class to make sure I miss anything? Yeah, I'll definitely post the video. The last time the video got corrupted, I couldn't, that's why I couldn't post it. So this time, if everything is fine, I'll definitely post the video. No worries about that. Okay, so can you imagine anything? Can you do anything better to define your population? Okay, how many of you have already voted in an election, in a national election, not anywhere in the university? Is there anyone who has already voted? Not even a single one of you have voted? Okay, Painter. Okay, Grace. Okay, two of you. Okay, so let me ask you a question. Before you voted, what's the first thing you needed to do or you were asked to do? Once you were eligible for voting, eligible to vote, um, did you just go to the center and vote, or did you have any other formalities to do?
We had to get voter ID cards.
Exactly. That means you needed to have your voter IDs, right? Now, can you imagine what's going on? So, in order to have your voter ID, you need to register. Can you see that? You need to have yourself registered in the database. Obviously, they will somehow have the data who are the new voters, but still you need to register for it. Or for example, I'm from Asia. I'm not from this part of the world, but if I get the uh, uh, citizenship from United States, I can register myself for voting as well as a new voter, right? Even though I'm already 18 plus, I can't really vote because I'm not a citizen here. I'm a resident here, that's for sure, but I'm not a citizen of United States, so I can't really vote. So that means uh, even though you are eligible, you need to register yourself. So the next thing we could think that we have to register for vote. That means for that particular election. Okay. All right. Can we do anything better? Can we do any better? Can you imagine uh, to even shorten our list? Because if we have a bigger population, if we have a large number of people who doesn't even have any concern about the election, who doesn't even uh, have a say about the election, then our estimation will be wrong. You know, it will be uh, quite distant from the actual one. It won't be a good estimation. We need to have precise, a concise number of people whom we want to study for the election, for the survey. Can you imagine anything better? That's how, that's the process of setting up the population. Once you have been hired to uh, uh, do a job like this, you go step by step like this. And often you can actually make things better by uh, taking care of more and more things and making your estimation precise. Okay. And today we only want to discuss how can we do that and how can we define it. Okay. So can you imagine anything else that we can do to set up a population which will give us a better estimation? Now, the population we are trying to consider is the number of registered voters. Okay, that means we have already registered for that particular vote before deadline. There is a certain deadline, I believe, in most cases, that whether or not you are going to vote for that election or not. Okay. What else? Can you think anything else? Those who have already voted might have a better idea. Can you imagine anything? Okay, let me help you. So we might try. I'm not saying that it will work or not. It's a trial and error based estimation. You might set up something and look for errors. I mean, whether it's giving you a better result or not, and then you come back, make a new estimation and all that. It's a trial and error based estimation. So you might try the likely voters. What do I mean by likely voters? So amongst those registered voters, not everyone will actually vote. That's the obvious case. If you have seen this before in the news or in any online platform as well, not all the registered voters will vote. Some will not go for voting. Some will uh, um be, let's say, if they might be sick, they can't go on the election day. Some might be negligent about the facts that doesn't seem to care whoever wins the election. For example, in our country, I didn't really vote the last time, although I was a registered voter. I didn't really vote because I knew that I I was kind of uh, going to leave my country soon because I was already planning to come here. So I thought I don't really care whoever wins the election, so I didn't really go for voting. So the likely voter uh, might be a choice for the population. That means who will have their say, who are more likely to go for uh, voting, right? Now, the next thing you need to consider that whether it's possible to find the likely voters. Can you see any things that might come in your way that might create difficulties when you when you try to find the likely voters? How can you uh, how can you look for these people who can be your likely voter? That means who might vote in the election.
Political surveys.
Sorry,
Political surveys.
political surveys. Okay, what kind of surveys? Yeah, that's a good point.
Like sampling, like getting people's viewpoints.
Okay, so the funny thing is, we are actually doing or trying to conduct a survey on that particular thing. That means how many people will vote the current mayor. I mean, I've been hired for that, let's say. So I want to conduct a survey on the on a certain group of people, which I'm trying to define at first. The first job in my hand is to define that number of people. Um, then I'll conduct a survey on that population to see what are the chances for the current mayor to be re-elected. So I can't really use that because it will be a loophole. If I have a survey on that as well, on finding the likely voters, it will be a loophole because each of these will be connected. Okay, yeah, but still, that's a good choice. That's a good point you made. Okay, so we might think the people who have voted the last time, they could be uh, defined as the likely voters because they have already voted the last time. So we might say that, yeah, they will probably vote this time as well, right? Or uh, the people who have just registered for vote for the first time, they seem to be more interested in this entire process and all that. Someone who have just got 18 plus, registered for vote, they seem to be more interested in voting. So you might say that they should be a part of our likely voters as well, right? But we can't really say that they will vote or not. Some might not go for voting. So there is a likelihood we need to consider whether or not one individual will vote or not. So often it's difficult to set up the population. You can see there are several options. You need to set up one. You can't really have two population, right, in a single. In most cases, you can't really have two. I believe in higher or advanced cases, you might have more than one population. I'm not sure, but at least in most cases, in the more cases in our level of study, I don't think we can have more than one population. That means somehow or other, you need to define your population in a way, obviously, that gives you a better result, but there will be several options, but there might be several options there. I shouldn't say there will be, but there might be several options, but we need to find a way so that it gives us a better result. If you remember, we had one example. We wanted to conduct a survey. We went to a mall, shopping mall, and we started picking up people, right? If you remember that example. So for that survey, initially we thought the citizen of Tacoma should be our population. Then we had an impression that no, the people shopping in that mall could be a better choice of population, because we have only picked up people from that shopping mall. We didn't really go to different places. So as you can see, we might have different options, and it completely depends on you how you are defining it. But the way you are defining it will also determine how better estimation you'll have. Okay, so if someone picks up the citizen of Tacoma as the population, and if someone picks up the people in the mall as the population, will have different estimations. And I assume the one who picked up the population, the people in the mall as the population, will have a better result. So in statistics, definitely we want to estimate in a way which is pretty close, or which will give us a very, very good result, right? Very, very good estimation. Okay. Now, what are the drawbacks of doing this or trying these different things? Or what could we encounter when we want to do this? So for that, we want to see this next example. We are still on page 232. Okay, let me read it out for you first, and then I'll try to explain it. Okay, in November 1988, former professional wrestler the Body Ventura was elected the governor of Minnesota. Okay, up until right before the election, most polls showed he had little chance of winning. Okay, there are several contributing factors to the polls not reflecting the actual intent of the electorate. Okay, now don't look at the points first. Try to imagine what could be the reason that in that survey before the election, the wrestler got really, really bad survey result. I mean, he didn't really have a good chance of winning the election as per the poll results. When you conducted the survey, when you conducted the poll, you might conduct different polls, because before the election, different parties might conduct polls. So you will have more than one poll probably, because some different agencies might hire people to make these surveys and all that, right? So in most polls, that wrestler didn't really have enough support from the people. Most of the people didn't really go for him. They actually chose the current governor or the candidate from the opposition party, not the ruling party. But the wrestler didn't really get enough responses from the people. Why do you think? What's the first thing comes into your mind? Why do you think that might have happened? That's a real life problem, though. We have already encountered it in 1998. Why do you think he didn't really get enough vote in the polls before the election? And despite the fact he actually made it in the election, that means eventually he won the election. So there was a certain discrepancy in the poll and the election result. Why do you think this could have happened? This had happened, rather. Just try to imagine the situation. He was a wrestler, by the way, and he was actually the third candidate. He was not from the ruling party. He was not from the opposition party either. He was just an individual who was trying to be a candidate for the election in the, I guess it was, in Minnesota. Is there anyone who is able to find one reason? I don't think most people would admit that they were going to vote for him. And why do you think that? Why do you think that most people thought that I shouldn't say this, that I'm going to vote for him? That's a good point, though. This could be a reason. But why?
Probably because he wasn't a career politician and they didn't want to, like, I don't know, have someone think badly of them. Maybe he did stuff that was kind of funny or weird, and you wouldn't want to admit you were going to vote for someone like that, but you wanted to. I don't know. It's just an idea.
That's a very good point. Yeah, exactly. He was not a politician whom you have already known for years. He was not a politician at all, in fact. He was a wrestler. Somehow he thought, maybe after retirement, maybe he thought that I should stand for the governor position and maybe I should work for people. I have the fame, people know me, people like me, then this might have, pushed him for the election, right? But he was probably not known for his policies and policy making and all that. He was not a politician. So some people might have thought, hey, if I say that I'm going to vote him, people might laugh at me. People might find it funny. That could be one reason. Yeah, that's a good point. Anything else? Anything else that you might think could be the reason behind this?
Maybe they didn't know who he was or that he was running.
Okay, yeah, that could be a reason as well. Initially, they might be struggling to understand, or might be struggling to find him familiar. They might be in a tentative mindset that is he the perfect choice or not? Do you actually know him or not? Obviously, not everyone watches the wrestling shows and all that. right? That could be a reason, yeah. So eventually he won the election. So that means I would assume that people actually know him pretty well, because this is less likely that people don't really know a candidate and eventually he the candidate wins the election. People start voting him. So yeah, that could be a possibility. I agree, but that's less likely. Okay, so let's see what are the assumptions from our writer. Okay, so he says one reason could be that uh, since the wrestler was running from a third party, uh, it could be because the polling agents, that means the people who were conducting the polls, were mostly from the two major parties, like, for example, from the Democrats and the diplomats, right? Okay, so Republicans, sorry, Democrats and the Republicans. So if you are not one of those two, if you're not from one of those two parties, then you might, the people might not give their opinion about him on those polls. For example, when, let's say, I've been hired by Republicans, and let's say uh, Grace has been hired from the Democrats, and we are doing this survey. We are going to places. We are taking people's opinion, and we already have our badge here that I'm from the Republicans, and Grace will have a badge here that's saying that I'm from the Democrats. So people might not say that I'll vote for the wrestler, right? Does it make sense? It could be a reason. It may or may not be, but it could be, right? Okay. What else? The next one, he says that many respondents to polls may have been embarrassed to tell pollsters that they were planning to vote for a professional wrestler. Yeah, that I think Painter made a valid point like this a couple of minutes back, if I'm not wrong. Was it Painter? Did you make that point? Anyway, so if it was someone else, I'm sorry for that. But yeah, that point was already uh, discussed. So yeah, this could be another reason, because he was not a politician; he was a wrestler. So people, you never know. People uh, might have been slightly embarrassed that whether or not we should vote for him. Okay. And the last one, they're saying that the mere fact that the polls showed Ventura had little chance of winning might have prompted some people to vote for him in protest, to send a message to the major party candidates. Okay, so yeah, that's a very good point as well. So you have two major party candidates, right? And somehow or other, you are not really satisfied with what they have been doing for the last couple of years, or what they have um, as the future plan, because before every election, each candidate has a certain plan which they share with people, that, hey, if you elect me, I'll do this, and this, and I'll not do this, and that. They have their certain plans which they share with people. Somehow, let's say you didn't really like those plans. Okay, so you don't really like any of the two candidates from the major party, whether it's the ruling party or the opposition one. You don't really want them to be elected. So you vote the third one. You vote the other one to show that, hey, you're not really good enough for the governor, for being the governor. So that's why I'm voting the other one. That could be another reason, right? Okay, this is just a discussion on how these things are done, but still, any question, anything you are kind of confused about what's going on here? Anyone? No questions at all? Okay. Now let's go to our next definition, which is sampling bias. Okay. So what does it mean? What's the English word bias mean? What can you interpret out of it? Don't go for the definition. Don't go for the situation here in our discussion. What's the word bias mean? What can you interpret out of it?
Something is lacking equality.
Okay.
Like, yeah, like it's lacking equality. It's like towards one side or another.
Very good. So let's say you might say that our instructor, that means you're talking about me, you might say that our instructor is biased towards the students who attend the lecture. You might say that. Or those who don't really attend the lecture, they might say that our instructor is biased to the students who attend the class because he gives them extra credit opportunities and all that, etc. Just for example, I'm saying this. So this means they're trying to point out that I favor some people out of the entire group. I actually favor a certain group of people, not everyone. That means I take care of the students who attend the lecture, and I don't do it for who don't really attend the lecture. This might be an allegation anyway, or you might define biasness like this. So what could be a sampling bias? Anyway, it was just an example. I'm not really biased towards anyone, okay? So what could be a sampling bias? When you're sampling the data, what could be the biasness there? How can you be biased about it? That means somehow, whether or not it was intentional, you have favored or you have picked up a group of people and you have neglected the other side of it, neglected the other half or other part of the group, right? So for example, in the election in 1998, most polls didn't really consider the young and new voters, didn't really go for their opinions. Okay. And they had certain reasons for that as well, because previously in their previous polls, previous surveys, they have seen that the new voters have a lower turnout in the election. That means even though they are eligible for voting, they don't really go for votes. They don't really go for voting. They have a definite lower rate of turnout in the election. So they actually kind of ignored that side. I mean, they ignored the young and new voters. But in the election, on the election day, the wrestler got most votes from the young and new voters. And that actually makes sense as well, because most young people actually like wrestling. Most people around that age from 10 to 20, I'm not saying the other people don't like it, but I have seen in my when I actually was in that age period as well, I have seen people like wrestling as well. So he actually got vote from the young and new voters, most votes from them. And the survey actually didn't consider them at all. Probably most of the polls didn't really consider those young and new voters. So we can say that the polls were kind of biased. Okay, there was a sampling biasness. Okay, we say the polling samples were subject to sampling bias because they omitted a portion of the electorate that was weighted in favor of the winning candidate. Does it make sense? Just try to use the definition. Try to see what it's trying to convey to you. The reason I'm taking this long for this discussion is you will have several questions in the next couple of homeworks and in the exam. And I want you to differentiate most situations. I want you to differentiate when can you find the biasness and when not. What to determine as the population and what not. These are tricky little problems, but you will definitely encounter a lot of those in the upcoming couple of weeks, okay? And I want you to succeed in those. So I want you to feel these things, feel these situations, not only memorize the definitions, it don't help. I want you guys to understand it completely. So we won't do it fast. We won't go for tons of topics, tons of contents. Rather, we'll try to go as deep as possible and try to limit the contents as per the requirements of the course. We'll try to maintain in a way so that it definitely meets our requirements, but also we can spend much time on this so that you can understand what's going on. Okay. So let's look at the definition now. At page 233, a sampling method is biased if every member of the population doesn't have equal likelihood of being in the sample. Okay, like in 1998, the young people didn't have equal likelihood of being in the sample because in most polls, they are not even included, not even asked to have their opinion on those polls. Can you see that? Can you understand how the definition is set up? Anyone, any concerns about the definition? Anything you want me to rediscuss? All good? Okay, so we'll stop it here today. The next time when we meet on Wednesday, obviously by then you'll have your homework as well, but you'll have a pre-class assignment as well. I want you guys to go over the definition on page 233. You have, I guess, 3 definitions. Go over those, try to understand what they're trying to say. You don't need to memorize it as of now, but I want you guys to go over those definitions and see if you can interpret that, see if you can derive any information from that, okay? And example 7, try to see what they have done in example 7. We'll definitely discuss it next time as well, but if you read it before we meet, it will make more sense, okay? When I'll discuss, hopefully it will make more sense. Okay, So I'll make an announcement about the homework and extra credit assignment. And what else? Yeah, keep an eye on the deadline for the assignments. I'll have that in the announcement as well. And if you have any question, if you have anything that's confusing you, just let me know and I'll rediscuss it for you. Okay. Okay. All right. So let's meet on Wednesday.